Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another live stream. And we're going to see how today goes. It's been quite the show here with the bandwidth, but welcome back to Exotic Car Play Place. And today I want to kind of talk about the electric vehicle market. I know a lot of us car enthusiasts just love to have access to the best, most enjoyable driving experience. That just seems to resonate the most with us, But the electric vehicle market has been that one that's extremely polarizing and extremely controversial. And while some people swear by the electric vehicles, others will have absolutely no part of it. And so it's a love-hate market. But electric vehicles have certainly been going through some changes in recent time. Um, Just Blaze says, "What up, brother? Blessings to you and your family. Thank you very much, and same to you as well." Kevin, good afternoon from Lakeland. Hey, Kevin, how you doing today? Good to have you guys on board here, and I'll just drop a line here. Thanks so much, everybody, for stopping in, and I see we got a few people rolling in here already. So, anytime anybody's got any comments or questions or theories, I know it's a controversial topic, dealing with talking about electric vehicles. Um, Just Blaze says, I'm still kind of stuck on the F10 5 Series. The F10, I love the F10 as well. I can get it. I think that's probably one of the best looking 5 Series that BMW's ever produced, in my opinion. But you know what? The M5, the F10 M5 is just awesome because it's the last with a dual clutch. It's kind of a special model of its own right, whereas the F90 after came with, kind of the ZF. So more of an auto box. Um, Just Blaze says, I love them. I really want the 550i, but I'm scared of the V8. Yeah, the 550, it's a challenge for sure. Any of those with the N63 is going to be a bit of a hit and miss. I mean, it's going to be an expensive car to maintain long term. It's probably not going to be as reliable as the straight six, but nonetheless, I get it. When you want that fun car, you want the fun car. But today, talking about the electric vehicle market, have you guys seen what's been going on with the EV market lately? Like I was down shopping on the weekend. I was out browsing for all kinds of cars. I was actually out shopping, kicking tires at a couple local dealerships here this past weekend, and what I found was prices on these electric vehicles on the used car market are absolutely ridiculous now. Um, Just Blaze says, I appreciate all the you give when it comes to vehicles, especially BMW. I'm not really a fan of EVs, and you're certainly not alone. I would say by and large, most people are more of a fan of just a good old fashioned internal combustion engine. Um, but the EV market is just one of those weird markets, in that it was really hot a couple of years ago, and there were the real strong push by regulators and governments and saying, you know what, by 2030, you're going to be in solely electric vehicle. By 35, pretty much kiss all those ICEs goodbye. And I was in serious denial because I love the ICE vehicles. I love internal combustion. I like the sound, the performance, the power band you get from a building of torque. I love the fact that it's flexible. You can pull up to any gas pump and fill her up and be on your way. But EVs have gone through some changes here in the last little bit. The market hasn't been as hot in the last, I would say, year to 2 years. And it seems like the market's kind of dwindling away. I kind of want to bring this up for conversation and see what all of you are thinking, where you see this market actually trending. Because when you think about it, look what Porsche has been doing lately. They just retracted. And I know I just released a video about some of the big hot releases for 26. Porsche had a few, an electric Cayenne, an electric 718 Boxster Cayman. And a lot of those vehicles now are going to be kind of put on a hiatus. Word has it they might continue on with the electric manufacturing of hybrids or electric manufacturing of their Caymans and Boxsters, but they may now make that more of the entry level and upscale and sell you an internal combustion option. So it's pretty interesting what's changing now. And that all happened here this last week. And as a result, did you also hear that VAG or Porsche specifically, their stock prices took a big dive? Yeah, 7% dive. And on top of it, something crazy. Volkswagen said, you know what, we're going to back you up on this one. Volkswagen stock prices kind of went to the toilet as well. Crypto Crazy said, made it to another live. Love your content. Thank you very, very much. I really do appreciate it. And if everybody online here, if you're not currently a subscriber, feel free to go over to my channel. It seems like YouTube's not really pushing naturally through the normal streams. It's not getting the recommendations these days. There's something going on with the algorithm, it seems. But that's fine. Stuff happens. There's lots of that debate online. The big conversation is those of you that really like to hear me kind of gas on about cars. Yeah, please, it would be a lot of help if you went over and kind of subscribe to the channel and kind of helped out that way. That'd be super. But Dr. Troilage says, Porsche making EVing the 718 will ruin the car. And which do you think the best budget 911, like Porsche 718, Mazda Miata, or Toyota GR86? Well, the best budget 911, and I'll use that term loosely because there's no real budget 911 anymore. Even the cheapest 911s, like the 996s, are going up in price, creeping up there. That's probably your budget 911, but they come with their share of caveats and problems. So you've got to be aware of that. And if you're not a good DIYer, I would say probably the best 911 to get in as a starting point would be looking at a Carrera 2 911 in the 997 generation. That would be probably start around a 2005, 2006. That would be probably the best place to get a rear-wheel drive Carrera, narrow body, manual gearbox, and it's going to be a fun car, and it's going to be peppy, and it's going to look cool, and it's still going to look pretty modern. So that would be a good place to start. Car companies are losing money. I kind of see that. And I think that's what's starting to happen because along with this change that Porsche just said or announced this week, it seems as though their profits are down as well from somewhere in that 7 to 9% down to about 1.5%, 2%. And they realize that trying to do an electric vehicle version of whatever they're trying to build is trying to now compete with what the Chinese market's got. And now it's not that, in North America, we don't have access to those Chinese cars, but the BYDs of the world and whatnot are accessible to the Chinese market. See, and the thing is, Porsche and Mercedes and BMW and all those manufacturers are selling to one of the biggest markets in the world, China. But what's happening is a lot of those Chinese buyers now are saying, no, these luxury cars are way too rich for me. And they're actually buying more local, which is the BYDs and affordable electric cars. So this is what's starting to happen. The Mercedes, they don't, they'll sell whatever. North American market will sell us whatever they have to and comply with regulators, comply with government changes. But they have to also compete in these other markets. And these other markets are saying, wait a minute, buyers want something more affordable. And they don't want that $140,000 Mercedes. Let's get that luxury electric vehicle in China for, $65,000, $70,000, which feels and looks a lot like these expensive Mercedes. So ROL Sierra says in Europe, most of launches are electric, but they are ready for to it. But are they ready to? But are they are ready to it? So I'm assuming in Europe they're sort of fast tracking. We're hearing what's going on. It seems like it's a lot more carved in stone what's happening in Europe with the EVs, and I think they're a lot more advanced than they are here in North America. I'm from the prairies here in Canada, and I'll tell you, we love the diesel pickup trucks, gas trucks. We love internal combustion cars, cars that are easy to wrench, cars that are simple to fix, cars that are predictable, cars that we can get in and drive for 500 kilometers and we could gas it up at the next stop without having to wait 25, 35 minutes. Because we have cities that are spread out so far here in North America. So that's the big reason why in North America it seems to be a harder sell. But the manufacturers like Porsche and Mercedes and Volkswagen are all starting to see the writing on the wall, and they're all starting to retract. They're all starting to say, you know what? No, let's scale back a little bit and let's give the North American market what they want, which is an internal combustion engine. Wayne Rector says, how about let me just crack this up here. The Nero, the Chinese luxury, a Chinese luxury SUV. Well, I'll just start by saying all of these, including the BYDs. You're seeing some of those, like what is it, the Ocean, and some of those. I mean, I guess what I'll say is any of these Chinese EVs look interesting. They look fascinating, and they're definitely trying to appeal to the mass market. The thing is, obviously, we're not going to probably see those at this point in the North American market for at least for a while. And because of that, a lot of these, it's certainly, we're kind of an arm's reach away, is what I'll say, from a lot of these EVs. So we see what's going on. We see some of these record-breaking speeds, 400 and some kilometers an hour, for some of these new electric vehicles, these hypercar electric vehicles coming out of China, Yang Wang or whatever that is, and some interesting names, certainly some interesting technology. But until something changes drastically in regulations and federal government decisions, we're probably not going to see too much of that anytime soon. That being said, the Fords of the world, they've already said, I mean, we've heard the big player CEO at Ford commented that we can't compete right now with what the Chinese market's doing. And I would probably largely agree what I've seen, at least on paper. I haven't really had the experience to drive a Chinese electric vehicle, but I did take out a Mustang Mach-E on the weekend for a spin to get a sense of what this thing's about. I thought, you know what? No, let's take this for a ride. I've driven a few Teslas, the Plaids, the Ys, the X's, the S. Like I've driven a little bit of everything. I've driven some Kias and Hyundais. I've sampled a bunch of these cars. And I thought, this is the first time I had a chance to drive the Mustang Mach-E in the base format. It was the all-wheel drive with the base single motor. If we're being honest, it was a little underwhelming. It was a little boring. After you drive and experience like a Plaid Tesla, you get into anything else, and it has that same kind of power delivery, but the Mach-E just didn't really have performance that was enough to kind of make me, convert me over, if I can say that. Ahmed, hey, yo, Mark and Chad, hey, welcome back, Ahmed. Great to see you back. Was it Tierlet weight? I think combustion till now is way forward until they have figured out how to make electric as practical combustion in terms of battery change and how it does not affect the life of the battery. I think, you touch on a good point. I think where I think becomes more practical is having almost like a cartridge style battery that instead of standing there like a yo-yo for 45 minutes on a level 3 or, waiting for a recharge, is actually having a pre-charged battery, almost like, your propane tank. You want to get a propane tank for your barbecue. You go there, you swap the tank, you drop off your empty, you grab a full one. See, if they had a system like that, where it's just a load, reload, slide in, almost like the battery on some of your electric devices, when you can have sort of a modular slide in, slide out and on your way in 2 minutes, maybe that would work better and eliminate some of those concerns. But there doesn't seem to be any real hard and fast good solution at this point. Bob says, whatever speaks my interest. A few months ago, my mom wanted to test drive a new EV. What is that? EV, and none of the dealerships around here in Citrus County had any on their lots. That was and that was a thing. That was certainly it was hard to get your hands on EVs for a bit, and for a while, Teslas were selling out of like hotcakes. A lot of the Hyundai, Kias were selling like hotcakes. But now, if you look, actually, some of the worst sellers and some of the and things have flipped. Tesla stocks are down. They're really trying to throw those incentives out there, and sales are down and big time down in Europe. If you look at the sales, have literally tanked in Europe on Teslas. Um, some of it's for political reasons, some of it's the product, some of it's competition. There's a lot of reasons why. But here, let me take a swig here. But at the end of the day, sales are drastically down for a lot of these electric vehicles. And because of that, we are finding cars on the lot. And you're right, for a while, you couldn't find them on the car lots. And it was pretty much go by order only. And then weeks, months later, you get your car and you're good. But that now the overabundance is start showing up. And the reason I kind of touch on this subject of what's going on with the EV market, I truly believe the EV market is starting to flatline a little bit. It's starting to, it's definitely, I feel it's plateaued. It's definitely plateaued, right? Because even that Mustang Mach-E that I drove on the weekend, it was a 2022. It had something like 35,000 miles on it. And they were asking, the hell were they asking? Like 30K Canadian, which I don't know what that is US dollars. That's probably 45,000. No, that's, sorry, $20,000 US for a 3-year-old Mustang Mach-E with 35,000 miles on it. And they were asking that kind of price. And in this market, that seems like an absolute steal. But most importantly is not how much it cost. Most important to recognize is it was almost $60,000 when it was new. So it's half. So it's actually lost 50% of its value in 3 years. 50%, folks. So what one thing that came to mind is for people that are looking at buying electric vehicles, the value proposition is way better to go with something slightly used. Buying new, the depreciation is absolutely immense. And I saw that. I talked to the guy, I drove the car, and I saw the window sticker. I actually got him to print that off from me because you can get a window sticker for everything. That's even used cars. And it was actually mind-blowing how much that car lost value. So buying a new one is definitely a punishing proposition. ROL Sierra says, Tesla and 3, are you okay if you do not travel long distance and driving them for fun? I think they're fine for that. Like they've always seemed to be that car that works for like a city dweller, short trips. Maybe you got to work. Maybe you work, 10 miles, 15, 20 miles at work, and you do these round trips. Maybe you only charge once or twice a week. And you don't have to go long distances. And even better, if the weather's warm, electric vehicles can work as a utility type vehicle. Oh, hang on a sec here. As a utility vehicle, so a vehicle that's maybe your beater, if you will, or something just to rip around in, it can certainly suffice. And if there's one thing I want to say, as a true car enthusiast like I am, and a lot of you are as well, some of you are just practical. You're looking for the best solution, the most reliable, the lowest cost of operating. Some of you will look at a Tesla or some, a Nero EV, for example. I saw that on the weekend too. And you'll look at something like that, or an EV9 or EV6 or what have you, and you'll say, like, that offers a lot of great amenities, and it offers a lot of bang for buck, and you can save a lot of money on short transportation, driving your kids around and doing all these things and errands and going to work. And you do the cost, you weigh the cost analysis on that, and you say, you know what, I think it makes sense to buy an EV. For utility vehicle, it can make sense. That said, if you're just looking at it for that cost basis analysis and doing calculations based on how much it's going to cost me at the end of a year, 5, 10 years, there's no doubt you're probably going to save money in a 5-year time frame with an EV, 10-year. The return on investment probably puts you out to that 5 to 10 years. Like I wouldn't say because you are paying a lot more for an EV up front, because that same level of technology generally is a lot more money. Um, it's going to take you longer to pay that differential. You get the gist of kind of where I'm going with that. It's going to take you longer to kind of close that gap to get back to where you would have bought it in an ICE vehicle. That being said, all the limitations still apply, right? Limited range, cold weather, takes a toll. What does that ultimate battery life look like, and replacement costs? What does that all look like? Damage to the underskin. I mean, there's always crap on the roads here. I, run over a pipe the other day. Today, a big piece of cardboard with a wood frame to it. It was flying around on the freeway and smashed me right on the front of my truck. So, you have a weird, glitch like that. And if it hits the wrong spot in one of those EVs, it can take that car out. So there are limitations, there's restrictions. But as a true car enthusiast, I'm looking for, I guess what I'll say, bang for buck for fun factor. I'm always looking for something that's going to be interesting to get behind the wheel and really excite me to drive. Plaid's 1,000 horsepower electric vehicles are exciting at a whole new level. That said, you don't get the rumble, you don't get the vibration and the feel. So there's limitations. There's pros and there's cons to everything. But the return on investment is going to be a little bit higher on an EV, even though you're saving money on the fuel costs. Even with the additional power costs at home or wherever, with, let's say, a level 2 charger you wire up at home, you're probably going to save money in the long haul. The problem is, again, you're paying more upfront. So a lot of people recognize that. That's a big reason why a lot of people aren't buying slightly used EVs. Hence, the depreciation just destroys them like that. What do we got here? Hydrogen could be an option. Wayne says, how about the Lucid Air Sapphire? Pretty cool car. All those things, though, again, I mean, these startups and these vehicles that are on the hairy edge of potentially going out of business. There's some really cool cars out there, but the catch is, if you're a startup like this, or like a Rivian seems to be doing better than most. Slate has promise, because they're coming out, possibly have the founding of Jeff Bezos, but it feels to me like a lot of the startups struggle, and I think it's a risk buying those sort of startup EVs rather than getting into, like Mercedes. They're gonna still be around. Mercedes, even if they don't flourish with EVs, they'll still be around. They can probably support the product line a little bit better. But something like a startup EV company could be a risk buying if they go out of business. Ahmed, you can get the BMW i8 plug-in hybrid for cheap, and those cars are pretty fun. They are pretty fun. They look cool too, with the doors and the profile. The plug-in factor is cool. The 3-cylinder is a little wonky, but you know what? When you put the engine and the electric together, it zooms away. It's a pretty quick little car, and it definitely has the look. And they are, yeah, I've seen them down like $50,000 range now. So that's an option, you betcha. We see people don't want them. They were a trend that is tanking. Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, I think that was a trend. And a lot like Porsche, they were trying to get ahead of it. Volkswagen, ID4, they can't give those away. They're incentivizing those to the extreme now. And so what you're finding is a lot of these manufacturers are really trying to throw the incentives out there to get people to buy this stuff now, because there was a bit of an influx, and now it's leveled off. It's plateaued, and it's kind of like, what do you do, right? What are you driving? Most people now are going back to ICEs, because these manufacturers are like, well, people are, saying, you know what? No, I don't really want that. It doesn't fit my purpose. I want something that's a little bit more practical. And so, yeah, the ICE still kind of is always going to have a place, right? So, and it feels to me like the EVs are finally leveled off, and Porsche is figuring that out. They're retracting. They retracted on the Macan. They're saying, we'll give you the gas version of this, as well because it fits in the same chassis. So they said, you know what, we'll give you both. We'll give you both options. Volkswagen, I don't know what they're doing yet. Mercedes, they tried with the electric G-Wagon, and that's fallen flat on their face. And I also have a question. What do you want to drive today? I mean, if you can pick each part from each brand, what is the combination? What you would want to drive today? What you thinking about, Willis? Gets you a thumbs up. Right on. Thank you much, and welcome. Good morning for sure. What's the best of today? I think strong, solid NA engines or even proven turbo engines are good. Performance, Porsche builds the best turbo engines out there. NA engines, there's some great ones out there. You take your pick. Go 10 years ago and take your pick. I mean, Toyota had, that 3.5, Lexus, that 3.5. That's some of the best NA engines out there. Porsche has some great ones that until they converted at the 991s, they had some great NA engines. There's a lot of great naturally aspirated engines. Lexus LC500, great NA engine. I mean, I could there's a million listings of great NA engines or even turbo engines like Porsche could create. BMW's finally started to do decent turbo engines. Audi in certain engines, the Turbo 5s are good. Again, certain models, certain makes. I would say get the best of either the turbo NA engines and team that up with a plug-in hybrid. Gets you sort of that halfway house where you can do those short trips with the plug-in hybrid. I mean, a lot of these Lexus cars now, the NX 450 plus H gets you almost 50 kilometers, 30 miles on a charge. So you could pretty much plug it in, drive to work, drive back, plug it in again. And you do that on a weekly, on a daily, and you could barely use any gas, but it gives you more power, more boost, more pressure. And I mean, let's face it, we all like better performance, right? I like cars that giddy up and go. So that's why some of these hybrid supercars are really intense. Now, do they lose personality? I think they do when you lose the ICE part of that. But that's where companies like, Ferrari has figured out how to create a car that sounds pretty good and has the hybrid drivetrain. McLaren, they've dealt with reliability issues, but truly that's probably the sweet spot right now. Go back to not these little garbage turbo 3s and these garbage little direct injection, 1.5 liter garbage engines. Put something a little bigger, more displacement, either bigger NA or something a little more power. I like what Toyota and Lexus is doing with the dual port and the dual port fuel injection with the direct injection. So you don't have the cleaning to do on the intake and the carbon fouling business. So if you could adopt that technology across the board and put in some durable ICE engine with a plug-in hybrid, that gets you great performance, that economy when you want it and know how to work it. And of course, you still have the reliability. You don't need to use the electric part of that so much. But this EV market feels to me like going all EV is losing its steam right now. And so I guess the question to you guys, what do you feel? What's the rest of the crew here thinking about internal combustion vehicles versus EVs? Are EVs look to be kind of going away in your take, in your opinion? Do you think EVs are sort of dying out now? Do you think they've sort of lived their lifespan and it's, some of these manufacturers are starting to get back to brass tacks again? What are your feelings, everybody out there? Anybody have any thoughts as to, what the future for EVs might actually look like? Any thoughts? Let's just take a pause. Any thoughts, everybody? And let me just see here if I can pull up some news here. Pull up some EV. I'm going to pull up some EV news for you, everybody. Here, you want some front page news? BYD cuts prices on low-cost Corolla killer EV to as low as $19,200. Australian. EV tax credits come to an end. Here's how much people saved. So Car and Driver has an article here where they kind of run through and they say how much people have saved. On a per capita basis, California is still the leader with 857 claims per 100,000 returns. Next was Washington with 571 per 100,000. We're talking, let's just see, residents there nabbed about a third of the total, $1.1 billion across 164,000 new and used models. Next was Texas with 38,000 claims, totaling about $287 million. It's clear that people are saying tax credits we're saving people money. That said, tax credits seem to be kind of going away, and I mean whether you're seeing it over down in the U.S. or you're seeing it up in Canada, the tax credits are certainly going away. What do we have as a renter? Have to drive ICE for now. EV not fit every day. Totally, that's another great point. I know people that live in apartments here, and apartments might give you a single 120 volt outlet to plug in your block heater if you're lucky. A lot of don't even have that. Some will have that. Then you could probably plug in your charger, but even that, a lot of times there's restrictions, and they may even frown on people plugging in electric vehicles because it'll draw a lot more. But that certainly is a potential problem, right? That is a potential problem. Good morning, father and son Ferrari rescue. Hey, Ian, how you doing? Good morning. I think the way to go is hybrid, especially in our climate. The setup, your 296 is perfect. Maybe more on range on electric would be nice. I would agree, Ian. I would agree. They're going that far already, and maybe that's the shift, right? I think BMW kind of they went too far the other way with the i8. I think they created that little turbo 3, and then they put that it was mostly electric that gave the majority of the performance. So I think they kind of really went heavy on the electric side and light on the gas. Where the 296 went much more gas and a little bit electric just to give it that little torque fill and a little extra off the get-go. So I think there's definitely some opportunities there to bump that up, and we're seeing that actually. That's the Ferrari F80. That's the F80. They basically tuned up that 3-liter as much as they could. I think they produced somewhere at 800 ponies, but then they just absolutely gave it the big bananas with all the electric on there, more electric drive, more motors, more batteries, and yeah, so they've taken that to the next level, and that's the F80. But yeah, certainly maybe doing something with double the capacity instead of getting 25-kilometer range, which a 296 gets you. Or in a perfect world, I don't think it'll get you that, as they say it will. I wouldn't want to drive it from 25 to 0 and then risk that, and then the car won't start. But they say it'll get you 25K. But even if you could double that, and get you the extra boost. So instead of the extra 165 horse, what about an extra 250 horsepower plus the additional range? That would be sweet. So I would agree with that. I think that could be intriguing. Considering building my own jetpack, I could get on board with that. That would be fun. Let's see. News, front page news. Better electric EV stock, Lucid versus Rivian. I'm not even going there. Let's just see here. What else we got? Our recommendations. So the Globe and Mail says our recommendations for the 5 best EVs starting at less than $60,000. So you want a cheap EV? Let's talk about the Globe and Mail's version, shall we? What's the Globe and Mail say about the best 5 EVs under 60 grand? Can I get into that, or are they going to cut me out? Oh, sorry, guys. Subscription service. I'm not having any part of that. Sorry. Paywalls. I'm out. Let's just see. What else do we have? Ottawa says Chinese EV tariff review is informal with no specific deadline. See, it's the politics get in the way. Let these OEMs do what they will, build the best car, sell it to the world, see who rises to the top, right? I mean, like they say, the cream rises to the top. I think the best will prevail. What else do we have here? Uh, the EV credit is dead. Long live the EV credit. Yeah, so it went away and then it came back. We heard about that in Canada. They knocked it down, then it came back. I think that they saw the writing on the wall for sales and didn't want to destroy the market completely. Let me see. Let's see. I'm gonna do a search here. I'm gonna find that. Let's see here. I'm gonna see what I can find for all y'all. The 11 cheapest EVs you can buy. Can I find this list here for you? What are the cheapest EVs? Well, here's a great list. Anybody thinking about buying an EV? Well, I'm not here to sell any of these because I truly love the ICE, but I will kind of share this list if anybody's curious. The cheapest EVs, starting from the most expensive down to the cheapest, is a Tesla Model 3. Starts around $44,000. It's $43,880. Then you have the Nissan Ariya, which is $41,265, followed by the Kia Niro EV at 41 grand, Mustang Mach-E at 40,000. These are in, I believe, in US prices, because as I said, that Mach-E that I test drove on the weekend was actually, I saw the sticker and I thought it was up close to 60 grand, but it was the all-wheel drive version of as well. It wasn't the base model. The next one is a Subaru Solterra at 39,900, Hyundai Ioniq 6, 39,000, a Toyota BZ4X, 38,500, Chevy Equinox EV at 34,995, a Hyundai Kona Electric at 34,400, the Fiat 500e at 32,500, followed by, drum roll everybody, the Nissan Leaf at 29,600. Who wants a Leaf? Anybody? Going once, going twice? I like the branch. I don't like the Leaf. Let's see what we use. Father and son said, I do think insurance will increase for homeowners where have EV parked in the garage. The fire risk will prove to be a higher risk for insurance. Yeah, I think you're right there, Ian, for sure. I think as we see more and more of this overheating of batteries and cooking, and I know there's a million people out there, the pro EV people, and I'm just here in the middle. I'm delivering the information. What I understand that EVs have a market, but there is a fact, and the fact is there's lots of them sort of self-combusting, and they get into these thermal runaway conditions, overcharging. Have you ever had your phone? You charge it too much, and next thing you know, it gets really, really hot. Absolutely, I have too, and there have been many fires as a result of that. Or a collision, all of a sudden they ignite and you can't put that fire out. There's been people, unfortunately, recipients of a bad situation and couldn't escape a burning electric vehicle. So it's a very sad state, but there have been some burning on the side of the, even parked while charging. Do you remember when the Chevy Bolt EUV and EVs came out? Those were just burning up like right on people's driveways. There was basically park outside warning for everybody. And I would agree, Ian. I think that's going to be a thing. I think as more statistics start coming out. See, right now, insurance companies don't know what the hell they're doing. But as more statistics come out, they're going to realize expensive insurance claims like damage to batteries, to body panels, fires, and issues like that are going to result in increased insurance claims at some level. And parking in a garage does represent a risk, not just for the car owner, but also potentially for their home. Let's see. Yeah, the problem is fires can't be put out that easy. No, that's totally true. They can't be. They're the fires are. Let's put it this way. I have an electrical background. Okay, for anybody on here who knows kind of a little bit more about me from my past. I took post-secondary electrical engineering, and so I definitely have a knowledge, a thing or two about electrical systems. And the problem is, even with that arc flash energy is extremely hot at the source, not to mention the fact that you can't put out these types of battery. It's not like an AC system alternating current where you get in your walls where you can turn a breaker off. and essentially isolate yourself from the source. With a battery, you can do that, but the source is right behind that switch. And a battery is effectively a ball of high energy. And you're riding around with that high energy source under your ass as you're riding down the road. And generally, when most things are operating, it's not a problem. But there is that risk. You've got that big, it's not nuclear, it's electric, but that high chunk of energy that's just buried under the seat. And it's a risk. You damage that or something happens to it, it's a risk for sure. Um, let's see. Yeah, many of tons of security. What is that? Security code still could do damage for sure. Sam also says, "Will you be testing the 2026? Will you be testing the 2026? Testing which? I guess I'll ask that. Um, are you talking the Mustang Mach-E or just in general? Flying cars. Sure, bring them. I'll try them out. I'll try anything once, right? That's what I do. I like to test out cars and try just about anything. As a lot of you can recognize, and Ian and many of you who have been on my live streams here in the last few weeks, I really, 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 I've got that. I managed to pick up after. It took me 3 years, okay, but it took me 3 years to order it, but it took me 10 years to make it happen. But I finally got my dream car. It was a Ferrari 296, and it is hybrid. And the thing is absolutely crazy. It's crazy. I've driven some of the older ICE cars, and as good as cars like a 458 are, and that they feel like, like they really do feel a little bit more dated. Kind of like when the 458 came out, it was so far ahead of its time. Then you look back and you're like, okay, I drove a 360. That feels really slow and sluggish and low on torque. Then you got into the 458, it was vastly better. Then you got in an F8 and it was vastly better than the 458. And now the 296 is vastly better than the F8. And like they say, a Ferrari, what's the best Ferrari? Well, it's usually the newest one. Maybe not on a styling standpoint. Not everybody's in love with the new ones. But you know what? They from the driver's seat, they just get better and better. And I've driven numerous Ferraris, Lambos, and I would say, man, there's not for what. There's more performance and power than you can ever dream of with these new hybrid supercars. Troy says, what I've known about EVs is that you can put an EV, especially Teslas. I wouldn't recommend a Tesla to my worst enemy inside a garage because the lithium batteries are flammable. That's been a big risk. That's what I mean. Like, parking them in as a garage is a risk. And the problem is parking them outside in Canada and you're in the prairies and you have minus 40, which we get minus 40. It's not uncommon. You've got your car plugged in, and even in a level 1, so your electrical outlet, your standard plug-in wall outlet is going to lose charge faster because of the cold weather than that charge is giving you. In the middle of summer, we had a one on loan, long range Model 3 there a few years back, and overnight in an 8 to 10 hour time frame, all we got was 10% charge on that battery. And that was a long range, high capacity battery. But it was proof to me that you need stage or level 2 or level 3 fast chargers ideally. And so there are limitations, and parking them outside in the extreme weather is going to take a toll. Sam says, daily driving a Ferrari. Trying to as much as we can, other than the fact that it's going to be cold as shit here, cold as balls here pretty quick. We know what it's like here in Canada. So we're going to try to, get as much out of it as we can. For me, daily driving is driving crazy financially. There you go. Father and son, Ferrari says, fingers crossed, 458 will be painted this week. Just got to go chat later up the awesome content. Well, good. Thanks for stopping in, Ian. And I definitely, if you get that thing on the road, I'd love to see it. Even better, I'd like to see it. Maybe go for a ride. That'd be super to go for a spin in that thing. I've always loved the 458s. I love all Ferraris. I just think that the 458, and again, we talk about every level they get better and better. But the 458, I truly see as sort of like it really took Ferrari to a whole new place. Because up to that point, we had the old school bumper look, old school, old school. Everything was a little old school, timing belts in a 360, a little more maintenance intensive. The 348s, you were engine out servicing. I mean, they were really cost prohibitive. They were maintenance intensive. Then the 458 came out. All of a sudden, you got that better dual clutch gearbox. You got a high revving NA. Like it's their sweet spot with the best character, the best of the old still, and some of the new. I love those cars. So anyway, Ian, yeah, I really appreciate you stopping by. And when that thing's ready to go, I'd love to see that car. If you get that paint on the 458, I'd be super to see that thing, because I have a friend that, well, he had one years ago, a yellow one, and he did the challenge wing on it, and he did the challenge front spoiler on it. He had the big ties. I don't know what you call those, to hold up the front splitter, like a full-on custom splitter on the front, and a challenge wing on. And that thing was, you talk about badass. I have pictures of it. I could probably get you some pictures and video. Actually, some of my early videos of that car. It is one of the most badass 458s that you would ever imagine. And I would even challenge you even consider doing something like that, because it would take a regular 458 and take it to a whole new level for looks and road presence. But if you're thinking about that, I can definitely show you that. And look on ECPP, early generation videos there. Like go back 8 to 10 years and you'll see some of that. There's a yellow one in there, and it's got that wing on there. So thanks, Ian. I appreciate that. Fingers crossed. Yeah, I get it painted. Hopefully. No, appreciate you stopping by there, Ian, for sure. Troy says, even a snowy Alberta one EV probably can go, what is that? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble. Go kablam. Then it's, yeah, sayonara. Yeah, I think that's the risk. That's the risk with any of these EVs. But then the EV proponents will always tell you that gas engines have been burning up for years. I can't tell you how many Kias and Hyundais I've seen. I've got videos where I've shown you what was left over after a roadside burn because of a Theta 2 engine by Kia or Hyundai. I've got videos of burning ICE. I've got burning vehicles of electric. I've seen it all. So everything has there's volatility in all of it. There's energy source there. And if it's not contained, it's a risk. But the real question is, what do you get your jollies out of? What's the most fun? What's the most fun? Because whether you enjoy ICE or whether you enjoy EVs, I guess my question to you would be, what makes the most sense for you and your lifestyle, and what's the most fun to drive? And I'd be curious to hear that. I've driven some cool EVs that are really fun to drive, but I get it. Like there is a soulless aptitude there that just isn't quite the same. Just not quite the same, honestly, for being, I don't know. It's just kind of just one of those things, right? So, what else do we have in the news? What are in the news in EVs? See, used EV sales take off as prices plummet. See, New York Times has a great note here too. Used EV sales plummet. Or take off. Sorry, used EV sales take off as yeah. And so there's an article there about the used EV sales taking off because the prices are going down, and that's exactly what I saw on the weekend. That's exactly what I saw when I test drove that Mustang Mach-E, because at a 50% depreciation, I even saw this the book price. I saw what the dealer had. I saw their numbers. I saw the numbers. I mean, as much as they can show you, there's always other little hidden numbers. But on the used market, it's kind of hard. They kind of just get what they get. They're actually trying to sell that car, list that car for about $2,000 below their cost, They had already knocked it down like something like $4 or $5,000 from when they initially tried to sell it, which was 2 months ago. The car that I was looking at was on the market for 160 days at another dealer. So going on Car Gurus was a great place to shop. So you can take that car that you're shopping for, you can search it on Car Gurus, pull it up, filter out, and you can find that exact car with that exact VIN. And you're able to find out how long that car's been around, what's the price, how much have they knocked off the price. And if you talk to the dealer, like as the public, like as Joe Public, you only have access to see how much they've knocked off and if is it fair market value. But the dealer was able to log in as the dealer entity, and they did that for me. And they got another element that they can show you their price and how much their price has changed and their cost. And so you get more information when you get the dealer to actually pull it up. And I end up speaking with the general manager who was able to pull up that data for me. And I saw that they were in the hole. They were willing, but because the car's been sitting and nobody's buying, no interest, they're just trying to get it off the lot. So this is what you're starting to find with a lot of these EVs. People are just like kicking them to the curb. A lot of people just not buying them right now, and they almost have to give them away on the used market. Let's see what we got here. Let's see. R. Young says, people who complain about EV cars never drove or owned one. It's all hearsay. Nissan transmission issues are also similar. The ones complaining are non-Nissan car owners. All hearsay, bro. And I'm at fault also by going along with the hearsay at times. Yeah, there's, you know what, I can see what you're saying in a lot of ways. I think the Nissan phenomenon's one aspect. I've seen enough people who have modern day Nissans who have experienced problems with them. I'd say their early generation Jatcos have been a real problem. That said, a lot of their engines are actually great. Like you think of the old 3.7s, 3.5s. As a matter of fact, the new Pathfinder's gone back to the 3.5 and they put in a torque converter auto. That is actually a pretty solid unit. Same thing with the Frontier. Great truck, but it's an NA 3.8, right? With a torque converter. So a lot of Nissans they're all painted with the same brush as junk, but there's some good Nissans. And I shared a video recently on my on the main channel here about the only Nissans I would buy. And I still stand by that. A lot of the other ones are driven by CVTs, which I won't have any part of because they don't tolerate the hard driving, the abuse, and they can be susceptible to failure. If you do your maintenance and you do frequent fluid changes on the gearbox, you can get through it, but they're just not as robust. That said, EVs, like there is a lot of fun electric vehicles to drive around. And let me put it to this way. After driving a Plaid, which I have, an S Plaid and an X Plaid, it absolutely sucks the wind right out of you when you punch it. It's ridiculous. Has anybody here been to California Adventure? You know, in California, the Disneyland, the other side. Remember there's that ride, the California Dreaming, or I don't know if they called it something else, the Mickey roller coaster there in Los Angeles and in Anaheim. Well, have you ever been on that? I'd like anybody here. Give me a thumbs up if you've been on that California Dreaming roller coaster in California. But on that roller coaster, you're sitting there and you're sitting on the roller coaster and you're looking up at this uphill. And instead of it like chugga-lugga-lugga-lugga up the hill, you sit there and you hear very gently this cute little Disney music playing in the background. And it's whatever. It's kind of noise. But then they count down 5, 4, 3. And then they count down, they hit it. Wham! And you go 0 to, it must be 100 miles an hour like that. That's what it's like to ride in a Model X Plaid. It's like 0 to wham, and it's ridiculous. So anybody who hasn't experienced that really needs to go for a ride. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not a big proponent of EVs. I like ICE because of sounds and all of that. But I get that aspect. I get that like blistering performance. I get that fact that it offers that level of performance you can't get anywhere. Like you could be at 60 miles an hour on the highway and punch it. It's gone. Like it has torque anywhere and everywhere. So it's pretty wild. Give it a try. to B Young's point, I definitely, I would say just give it a try before. Again, I'm not here selling. I like my hybrid supercar even more so. Like I like a lot of the NA engines, my F Type R that I had before. I love that thing. Or my V10 Lamborghini. I love that thing. That made the best sound. So to me, those are soulful cars that I think truly have to be experienced. Um, Tread. Hey, welcome, Tread. Thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Um, Bamboo Soja says only EV I would stick about getting would be the BYD, but too bad they don't have again it's not all markets have access to some of these vehicles. All we can do is the hearsay that we get from some of this. So I haven't experienced one. I'd like to maybe one day to review a couple of those and really kind of give you the full inside scoop. 20 what is it 23 Perfman says if we just close our eyes and think that we never drive any EV might be best for sure. Budget, not consider the how to fix it starting old bad battery life. Well, see, battery life I think is going to be a concern for some of those. I think that if you're buying a used one, it's definitely something to. I think there's a way on Teslas, and I don't know exactly how that is, but it's almost like on your phone, your iPhones. You can go on your iPhones and you can check to see um, how much not just the battery life at the top, but the capacity that your battery actually has. You can actually do that, and there's a way to do that. I think on the Teslas too. So if you have a good solid battery, you could probably still get 10, 12, maybe more years out of it. I got a gentleman that lives just down the road from me. One time I was driving the Lambo and I rolled up and I knew who he was. He knew who I was. We didn't really know each other, but we're in the same neighborhood. He had the older generation Model S, the more rounded off front grille and that. And I pull up, downshifting, and he was like, "Oh man, I love the car." He goes, "You want to race sometime?" And I mean, I just looked at him. I said, "I know you'll destroy me, absolutely." And he laughed. He said, "Oh, it'd be fun anyway." But even that, like I saw from way back in the day, some of these EVs that they do deliver a certain level of punch that's indisputable. But again, the ICEs you can't. I mean, they are what they are, and I think that's part of the reason why the market is leveling out is incentives are going away. Federal tax incentives are going away, both US, Canada. Prices continue to rise. And while there's more competition, even Tesla's kind of only offering marginal justifications and incentives. What is it, $1,500 off or 0% for 72 months? That's still not enough incentives for a lot of people to buy an EV. So what people are looking for is affordable, not an $80,000 electric vehicle. And I think that's probably the bigger sticking point than any of this that I've been hearing. I have a lot of people reach out to me and say, I would consider an EV if it was affordable, had good range, if I could go 400 or 500 kilometers, and I could buy that vehicle for $20,000, $18,000, and it was reliable, and the cold weather didn't hurt it that bad. There's a lot of people I've spoken to that feel that they would be part of that. They would try that out, but I think that's a sticky point for a lot of people. It's the sheer cost. Troy says, Astro says, I skipped California on my bucket list. Way too expensive. Yeah, I get it. It was a few years ago when we were there. It's getting pricey, man. It's Florida, California, Disney, all of that. I mean, that's a corporation. That's not even, it is what it is. But if you ever have a chance, I mean, whatever, it's a fun coaster. It's a fun ride. If you're ever down there, it certainly is memorable. Let's put it that way. Yeah, the cycle of charging limit, 0 to 100%, like 5,000 time, and the battery is done. See that? That's a good point. I heard something buzzing back there. It's electric, I guess. I don't know. That's a really good point that you make there, is that there's only so many cycles of charge. So it depends on, if you're doing a lot of short frequent cycles or full, from alive to totally done. There's different styles of charging, can accelerate the wear and tear on your batteries too. So that's all going to have a big impact. But that guy that I told you that from down the road there who has his old S, he's still driving it, his first generation S, and he's still rocking it. I don't know what he spent, if he's done any upgrades on it or not. I haven't really talked to him about that. But he's still driving it and it's still going. And that thing is shit, man. I don't know how old that is. It's getting up there now. The first generation, like that's when they first came out. So yeah, like that's something to think about and something that's a concern for a lot of people. But that's why the used market on EVs are, that's why the depreciation is so destructive on electric vehicles. Like I found, like that Mustang, is because there's a lot of fear of, what's the battery got left in it. If you're buying a 5-year-old Tesla, how many more years do you have left? How many more charges do you have left? And then what, to face a $50,000 battery change? See, I think that's the big catch. And if some of these manufacturers showed good faith and said, look, we'll give you a 25-year battery warranty. You know what I mean? If they sold that with a 25-year warranty, and then after, say every 10 years, they'd upgrade you to the latest battery technology. And if they were to show that good faith, I think you'd have a lot of takers, because I think that's another element, is like, how many charges can you get, or what's the cost of battery replacement? That's another one of the big selling features that a lot of people find that, no, I'll go with ICE because I don't know how many charges I can get. But what else do we have in EV news? Any other EV news out there we're talking about? Let's see here. Lots more to talk about. There's lots of here. Let's talk about one that's not so positive, unfortunately. Let's see. See, new guide helps firefighters respond to electric vehicle incidents. See, because this is a factor that we have to be thinking about. And if people are not thinking about, there's a certain reality of these EVs starting to burn, how do first responders deal with that? I know even on my 296, it even says along the VIN, see below the VIN at the base of the windshield, it actually says hybrid vehicle, like any of those EVs would say, something along those lines, because it gives emergency responders the heads up that they're dealing with something that may have some extra volatility. So what we have here is a guide by All News International Association of Firefighters wrote this article, and this is quite fascinating to me. So basically, and they quote, a new electric vehicle fire rescue response operations guide developed by the International Association of Firefighters is now available to help firefighters safely and effectively manage the growing number of EV-related incidents across North America. Released by the U.S. Fire Administration, USFA, and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, that's NHTSA, and we're all well aware of them and their recalls. The guide offers critical field-ready information on the unique hazards electric vehicles pose, including high-voltage batteries, thermal runaway, electric propulsion systems. As technology continues to evolve, the IAFF remains focused on ensuring members have the latest training and guidance needed to protect their communities and stay safe on the job. This guide is part of the IAFF's ongoing commitment to educating members and addressing the rising threat of battery-related fires. It complements other IAFF resources, including the Energy Storage Systems, the Emergency Response Operations Guide, and a June 2025 safety advisory warning. Members not to use fire blankets. Warning, members not to use fire blankets on EV fires due to safety risks and limited effectiveness. The IAFF also launched a new 8-hour in-person course on responding to renewable energy emergencies involving solar panels, battery systems, and other emerging technology. See, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes But I will say it's good to hear that there's training. There's more training going on for those emergency responders that have to deal with these failures, that have to deal with these problems. Is this question a survey for dealers, owners, or the general public? I think each would answer differently. As in the ads I saw once, the car contains millions of AAA batteries, which replaceable. Um, Thought they would just let them burn out. Yeah, tread. That's always been kind of my assumption is they just sort of let it peter out because there's really no way to fight it. I think the only what I've seen, don't quote me on this. I'm not the firefighter. This takes training, and they're learning too. The emergency responders. Well, my understanding is I think what they do is they basically just try to limit the collateral damage around, try to get people out safely, get others away from the vehicle, try to keep water on it to reduce the heat that imposes on other adjacent buildings, structures, vehicles, people. I think the idea is just to limit the damage of others and other equipment nearby. B. Young says, by the way, I'm a first responder, but we haven't been given new training on EV cars yet. Well, B. Young, that was just on that firefighter. You may want to Google that and check it out. It looks like they are slowly starting to wean people. What do you know about the fire blankets? Because I know in the electrical industry and coming, arc flash energy is something that you can limit with arc flash blankets, those heavy rubber blankets, because they do a great job of limiting arc flash and some heat. Do you guys use that if you're a first responder? Does that ever come up for debate, conversation about the blankets and what have you? If you there Be Young or anybody else has any thoughts on that, are you guys using that type of technology? See, never, yeah. So, and that looks like they're trying to get people away from doing that, probably because limited effectiveness and also to get close enough to drop the blanket on there is probably imposing that actual extra risk on the responders. So, it definitely having an electric vehicle has more than its share of risks, or at least not yet. I don't know. So this is what I mean, right? Like this is such because it's such a new and emerging technology. I think that's part of the thing, and that's a lot of it is people shy away from what they don't know. They know internal combustion. They know you carry a jerry can with gas, you don't light it with. They know what the results are, but a lot of people don't understand that hidden dangers, the EMF with electric fields, the systems that you get with batteries, the hidden energy sources, how to isolate it, emergency response, troubleshooting, lifespan, battery range, cold weather, hot weather. There's a million things, and just a lot of people just don't know. That's a big part of it. Tread, isn't the battery an internal fire without access? Probably. 23 Perfman says liquid cooling vapor chamber also can lift up the battery life. Absolutely, keep it cool. DTH says my answer would be sales high today, low on Wednesday. There you go. Comes and goes, right? Comes and goes. It's all based on price, priorities, incentives, motivation. But that being said, I don't know. It's the electric market is just what it is. It's sales seem to be down, and let's just look at that sales. Let's look at sales of these EVs. Volkswagen to pause production at 2 plants. So the Guardian writes in a letter here, Volkswagen to pause production at 2 of their plants as electric vehicles sales stall. See, here we go again as we talk about what's going on with Volkswagen and some of the issues they're having in selling their vehicles. Because what they're having right here, they're saying Volkswagen's pausing production of 2 of its plants in Germany because of a weak demand for fully electric cars. The car maker will suspend work for 1 week in mid-October in Dresden, as it's the EV plant in Zwickau, which produces 6 EV models for VW, Audi, and Cupra. It also plans to shorten the working week by a day at a third plant in Osnabrück in Lower Saxony. The decision by company emblematic of Germany's position as the engine of the EU's economy will be seen as a dent in the union's hopes of switching to continent to EVs within the next 10 years. Closure days are also being considered at a fourth plant in Emden, which makes the ID4 and ID7. We know the ID4 not selling, big incentives. Zwickau and Saxony have been converted to electric vehicle production, with the last combustion engine rolling off the assembly line in 2020. The switch ended 116 years of history that included production of the Trabant car. So lots of great news. Volkswagen, though, they're not probably too happy about that, but they're closing plants, at least temporarily. EV sales surge ahead of September 30th tax credit. That said, Yahoo Finance is telling us a different story. Because of this tax credit expiration coming up, it's September 30th, which is tomorrow, that there's a surge of EV sales because they're trying to get, and to that point that you guys, that was a great comment, would be high sales today, low on Wednesday. That's a great point. Manufacturers won't cover the 7,500. So you touched on that, and that's what I'm seeing. The rebate is going away. Tread says VAG bet too heavily in EV and SUV and NA. Totally agreed. And Porsche, same thing. Senior scientist said, who can compete with the B58? Best engine ever at 69,000. Love it every day. Bingo. I love it too. Same thing. 23 Perfman says the mines, gold, semiconductor, lithium. Of course, the government can't easily affect that. Yeah. So let's see what else. What do we have here? The boom in EV sales marks the end of an era. Tesla still nearly 50% of US EV sales. GM rises to 15%. Record EV sales as US new car market growth continues. See, it depends who you're talking to, but ultimately, I think we all know a lot of it seems to tie up with the incentives. So you remove that incentives, September 30th, I think we might start to see a different storyline here. Here's again Forbes. Forbes is stating EV sales surge before tax credit ending on September 30th. I think the writing's on the wall there. By the end of this week, we're going to see a different story. Consumers race to buy EVs before the time runs out. See, there's a million of these storylines that evolve around the sales of these EVs and the fact that incentives are running out. I mean, a $7,500 tax credit, that's a pretty big chunk. And if you're talking before tax earnings, it's a $12,000 before tax earnings. That's not insignificant by any means. TH says Nissan Ariya is one of the many EV models no longer made, starting with 2026 model year. B Young says, or if the gas price shoots up through the roof. Yeah, I mean, there's a million different variables here, and it seems the ebbs and flows. We know car makers were building the biggest pieces of crap back in the that energy crisis. We think about back in the I would say late 70s, early 80s, when gas was expensive, oil was expensive. So they started building these shitty cars that were cheap on gas, and that produced some of the biggest pieces of junk known to the history of the automotive sector. But that was driven because of the price of fuel. Well, this is always going to be a variable that ups and downs. The price of oil, cost of oil, cost of per barrel, or gas costs are all going to have an impact, and that's going to the market's going to fluctuate. Gas buying, EV buying, gas buying, EV buying. I'm seeing more people now driving around in these little shitty little diesel smart cars because they don't want to go EV, but they still want the fuel economy. So now they're buying a little diesel smart car and they're getting 75 miles, 80 miles to the gallon. So for some people, that seems to be kind of the way to go. Tread says hydrogen or Porsche synthetic fuel would be a better idea. Probably would be. I think a lot of these, honestly, in my personal opinion, I'm not a scientist. I'm not at the center of this market. I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I think it's like Toyota bullshitting us a little bit with their bullshit talk about solid state batteries, how they had something waiting. It's just, they're going to really, What are they doing? I mean, at the end of the day, the talk was within a couple of years they'd have a higher performance, high output solid state that could give us 1,000 kilometers, 600 miles, 700 miles on a charge. And there's a lot of talk, and a lot of rhetoric, but I don't really see much going on. And I think I don't know. Like hydrogen has options. Porsche has synthetic fuel. I don't know if it's practical in big volumes. We think about if we do a full market swap. I think, is it sustainable? What does the infrastructure look like on any of that? And those are great technologies, but the volatility of hydrogen is always still, the containment, the volatility. Porsche synthetic fuels, yes, those are all great ideas. But again, I can't help but think large scale. I can't help but think when we're dealing with something at a much, much broader spectrum, can this sustain the entire market? Because that's what we'd have to be thinking about to adapt to these new technologies. We have to be thinking about how's this going to help the whole market. And I think it's good that they're trying things, but at the end of the day, it feels like a lot of attempts to try just about anything to wean off other markets and other sources of energy. But I don't know. I haven't seen anything yet. Lots of talk. We've been heard lots about solid state batteries for several years now, lots about hydrogen for a few years now, and these new synthetic fuels we've been hearing about lately. But um, yeah, I mean, we'll see. But time will tell. Yeah, C-Tread, Porsche's limiting the synthetic to everyone's detriment, and I think that's going to be the thing, right? It's great for an exclusive bunch of individuals, right? That may be supporters of a product line or something, but it's not sustainable and certainly not available to everybody. That just doesn't make it accessible. So, for the time being, I can appreciate and I had viewers here asking earlier on, would it make sense to buy an EV? Is an EV a great solution? And I say it could be if you just need to get around to work, to drive your kids to school, work, play, and do all these things, and you're really a person on the go, and definitely more so if you're in the southern states where it's warmer more often. I mean, those are all positive attributes. That said, it's not forever either. Batteries will need a swap. Technology will change that. Of course, for the true enthusiasts, they'll appreciate the fast electric vehicles, but true enthusiasts will always appreciate, a high revving NA engine or something that makes cool sounds and that vibration in the seat. I think that's where the true enthusiasts are going to go to by default. 23 Perfman says, I do agree hydrogen is the goal for me. But the container is a hard thing. When you're going to purchase able, might be 2032, I think, if no more. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like it's not there today. Could it be there in 5 years, 10 years? I mean, it'll be interesting to fast forward, and I don't want to fast forward anything because I don't know where our whole world is going to be in 10 years from now. But I mean, the car industry, as it's progressing, or some would say regressing, depends on your perspective. Um, what does the next 10 years look like in the automotive space? It could be an interesting thing. But again, this kind of brings us back to the debate about how long does this go on, and EV sales, what is that like? It's trailing off clearly. New sales are down. Used sales are spiking because of the big depreciation. So it's kind of like a weird market, the weird market dynamic. But um, I guess all I'm going to say about that is, an EV is certainly something worth trying out if you've never tried it. For me, for a daily driver, it's fine, but I still love to have something that's if that's your only car, I don't know if that would suffice for me, but some people think it'll work. So Tread says, Le Car. Yeah, I remember those little putt-putts, like little, almost like the Fiat 500s. And those are all those little junky cars back in yeah, those are actually pretty humorous, to be honest. Peugeots, Renaults, all that little junky French cars that just weren't very well made back in the day. That's going to start hitting our market. You watch all this junk start rolling in. these startups and all these these little independent shops that are going to come out with these little putt-putts with 2-cylinder cars that just idle rough and just aren't great vehicles. You think of those junky, one of the biggest piece of crap cars on the market right now is the Ford EcoSport. Biggest piece of crap, if you ask me, with, a dry belt that drives the oil pump. They've had problems with the drive belt arm fracture issue there. NHTSA said, I think it was 2018, 21. It's a real piece of junk. It's a real piece of work. The dry belt, the turbo 1 liter, direct injected. You don't see many around because they just don't last. They sold a bunch and now there's just, where are they all? I haven't seen. If I'm lucky, I drive across town, I might see one. I don't think they last very long. Yeah, I tried 1 liter 3-cylinder. Yeah, they're trash. Hate to say that. I don't use that word too frequently, other than I really feel it's warranted, in my opinion. The Eco Turd or Eco Sport is trash. That's my personal opinion, and that's how I feel about it. Did you try Hyundai Ioniq 5 Ice Like? No, I haven't tried that yet. We were looking at those there. I'm not a fan of the looks of them, of some of the Ioniq styled vehicles, but that's a personal choice. That's more of a subjective, in the eye of beholder kind of thing. But as far as from the driver's perspective, no, I haven't. I haven't tried one out. So I'll be sure to be trying more of these vehicles. I'm going to be putting more of these EVs to the test, as well as continue on with my, the electric and the OE or the gas powered cars. I'll be trying a lot more here for sure. So, but anyway, with that said, everybody, I'm going to scooch along here, and I think I've been gassing on long enough. It's been an hour and 21 minutes, but I'm glad we finally found a better. I think we found the live stream here for my internet service. It seems to be doing a little bit better. So Tread, yeah, thanks for stopping by, and everybody, thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate it. And again, as always, if you haven't been over to ECPP, be sure to do that. And you know what? I've had some pretty interesting recent review or releases on my videos. I'm going to say drop a line here, because if you have not yet seen my latest video that I dropped there on the weekend, Saturday, I found the most and least reliable cars on the market right there. Have you seen this video yet, anybody? Have you guys seen this video? Be sure, if you haven't seen this video, it's definitely worth a watch. Head on over to ECPP and go give it a watch. It's fun. I add the regular amount of humor in there, and I rate some of your best and worst cars. This is a great video. Drop the line. Of course, be sure to head on over there if you haven't seen that video yet. But again, as always, hope you all have a wonderful day. And as always, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks again so much, and we'll catch you on the next time. See you, everybody. Bye-bye.